Disclaimer: no data subjects were harmed in the making of this podcast.
Welcome to the Privacy Bar and Bants podcast. We make privacy awareness simple. Sit back, relax, and grab your darkest privacy myths and misconceptions. Your mind-boggling experience begins in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I love to drink water.
Well, anyway, so who am I? I'm yet in the industry.
Next question. Next.
Welcome to the podcast, Tolu. It's so nice to finally meet you. I'm so excited that you're on a podcast today with us, and yes, I'm looking forward to how this is going to be a great episode. Welcome to the episode. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. Okay, so first things first, I guess congratulations are in order. You and your company bagged all the awards at the Privacy Con Awards, and like honestly, it was such a because in every category, I think you were nominated in about 3 or 4 categories.
Something like that.
Yeah, and literally you picked up for all of them. How does that feel?
I didn't pick up all of them. That is a point of clarification. I didn't get the privacy leading like women, which actually was weirdly the one that I thought if I'm getting any, it will be even more rewarding. It felt to have the tech one, because even though I work for a fintech, I don't consider myself a tech guy. No, tech guys are very techie. So I'm a paper kind of girl, so I will always favor like pen, paper, like throw it away, as opposed to let me use the coolest software to store like whatever. I don't know. So I'm very untech, but I do also understand that there's such an ownership for people in tech to protect data. So yeah, it felt so amazing. And I think the only thing I regret was that I couldn't be there in person. But yeah, it was such a huge win for myself and for Paystack, honestly. It makes everything almost worth it, because you're like, oh, people do see what we're doing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And guess what? Now you have your official tech bro badge. Literally, anyone tells you you're not a tech bro, you're like, well, sorry to correct
That's true.
you,
That's true.
but tech. Yeah, I won the award. I mean, that's great. So, like, I mean, what do you think was the one thing you guys did that probably stood out the most? Because I feel like, do you know, literally, I was sat next to someone at the awards, and the person I was sat next to was like, oh, absolutely, they deserve it. And I was like, oh, wow. Literally, consensus around the room that you guys deserved like the award. Like, what do you think you guys did that made the difference? Like, what is it? I'm really curious. Like, I'm so glad we have you on the hot seat as well, because I feel like a probe.
I mean, I think I am a bit of a terrorist at Paystack. Like when I joined, I made it my mission to boost and kind of bulk up the privacy. Like, in fact, even just create a privacy program, because people don't know what they don't know. So you actually can't blame people. And I think because there was no privacy department, it was legal doing it, which is okay. But again, it was lawyers who weren't privacy experts or privacy pros or had a privacy background. And what's great about Paystack is one of our core values is insist on high standards. That's one, insist on high standards. So it was such a delight when I'd be like, we need to stop doing this because it's non-compliant. And people are like, oh, okay, let's change it. I guess maybe coming from a big four, when you're a consultant, you kind of have to always do what the client wants. You always have to be a bit like sensitive. There's a way you massage the client. You can't just tell them this is wrong. So it was really rewarding, and it felt good because it feels like you're part of a team. Because if people see that you care and they back you and they're like, okay, because you care, we'll care. Not like we were doing this before you came and we're going to continue doing it, so whether you like it or not. There are a lot of companies like that. And it's like, you'll figure it out. That's why we hired you. You figure out how to solve the problem, and then we'll see if we'll do it or not. And because I didn't really have a team, I really relied on Stacks to kind of learn or absorb what I was telling them that we had to do. And it really gave me imposter syndrome, because I'm like, the way people are listening to me,
Yeah.
and nobody's like, challenging, or when you have a team, you can bounce ideas off people. You can say what, and I'm so fortunate enough that now I do. But at the time when I joined 3 years ago, I didn't have a team. So it was just like, I'd be like, okay, we need to update the privacy policy. They'd be like, sure. And I'm like, okay. They're like, just give us a copy and we'll put it on the website. I'm like, oh no, but who's going to review it? So we're like,
and like, if there's any problems, that's you. And if there's any problems, that's literally your responsibility. There's no team to be responsible.
That's what I'm saying. So literally, it's just me. So it was daunting, but then it helped me. It furthered and also helped my imposter syndrome. So it really, because I just thought I can't be the all-saying, like, I can't have the final word, but they were like, but you're the expert, so we have to defer. Yeah. So, and then they were now like, are you not the expert? And I'm like, no, I am. But I mean, I just need, yeah, good job. And they were like, okay, good job. And I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, I think that set Paystack up. Culturally, everybody at Paystack, it's all for one for all. But when it comes to work, everybody has an incredible amount of work. But it's the kind of company whereby people trust you. I remember even the other day, when we were putting well, I said the other day, a few months ago, when we put our data processing agreement on the website, and we put our list of service providers and processors on the website, I remember being like, oh, is that too much text? Because our DPA is very long. And they were like, should we have it there? If it's supposed to be there, let's put it there. So it was kind of like, I think what won us the awards was the fact that we're very intentional about these things. And Paystack is very user-friendly. We always want to do things with the least amount of clicks, the least amount of headache for our customers, our merchants, our users. So when I was thinking, dare I ask us to upload a 30-page DPA on the website? But it's like, but this is what's right. This is best practice. This is how you lead by example. So I think that's what did it for us. The fact that Paystack overtly is trying to educate people. We have webinars for merchants. We have webinars for just anyone who wants to learn about data privacy. And again, even when I was saying, oh, we do webinars for products? Can we do it for privacy? They were like, yeah, sure, give us a script, we'll film it. And I was like, oh, just like that. So I think, yeah, it's the support from the company. And I think our users and our merchants see that, because when we have hosted privacy webinars, the feedback has been amazing. So I'm just like, oh, people actually care. Because I'm so used to I love all things privacy and data protection. So I'll talk about it in my free time. And people are like, boring. I don't care. I'm accepting the cookies. And I'm like, no. So it's very good it's always nice when people meet you where you are and they're like, yeah, I learned something. Yeah, this was good to know. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So people want to hear. So yeah, I think that's what did it for us, really.
I mean, this is very interesting, because I feel, do you know what? I feel this is why it's so right that you're the one on this episode, honestly, because I have so many questions following on from what you just said. There is the issue of management buy-in, which doesn't seem to have been quite an issue for you. Seems like you got the whole, kumbaya support from the beginning.
Well, that's what I said. I was a terrorist. So I was woman army. And I think the more they saw that I was a dog with the bone, and actually what I was saying made sense, I got the management buy-in. That things started shifting. It wasn't like I had free reign. I had free reign to do what I wanted because there was nobody else doing it before I joined. But that top-down support came organically because they were seeing the things that were changing and were understanding why I needed to change. So I think, yeah, I was very blessed and very fortunate to have management support. But I also, it was a learning lesson because I came from a big four. I started at Paystack and I was like, you can't do this, full stop. But you actually have to still kind of, and that's a contradiction to what I said before, you still have to kind of massage and say, okay, these are tech guys. They want to build and push out product as quickly as possible. Now, nobody is thinking about privacy concerns. Now I'm here like, stop, sorry, you can't launch.
Yeah.
So that wasn't the right approach. The approach was, oh, what are you guys building? Cool. Let's have a look at that. So it was the approach that once I shifted my approach and I stopped being so militant, I got that management buy-in, I got that support because I stopped, compliance is always a no. There's always the naysayer. There's
Yeah.
a way to say, this looks cool. However, yeah, exactly. Even that but is telling. So you have to find a way to be like, instead of saying no, you say, how about we consider this? Or how about we, and then it's like, okay, we're on the same team, as opposed to no, start again. Sorry, we can't ship this.
This is a very I can't wait to go deep into this, but before we even go on, I promised that we're gonna do the I was today years old, and I'm sure the Rafa would literally kill me if we don't. So I was today years old privacy edition is like a thing we do on the podcast. I guess where you have to say something you learned recently, that was so shocking or like totally like changed your perspective on another issue. Or yeah, could be anything random. It could also just be like a really nice recipe. But yeah. But then privacy edition would make it one thing for the podcast. So if there's anything you'd like to share with us, please share.
Yes. I was definitely today years old in January when I've always known that, when you browse from a device, you may see, for example, if I go on Amazon with the newest MacBook Pro, it will give me higher prices than if I go on Amazon with some busted Dell laptop that's like 15 years old. So the fact that these websites through the cookies can read certain information about your device and then market or target you accordingly, I always knew that. But recently, I've learned that, of course, your location as well now plays a factor. I'm based in London, and anytime I want to book a flight or a hotel in a different country, I see about £300 more than anybody else. So I went on holiday with my friend in Vietnam in January. She's based in America. We were looking at the same hotel, and she was seeing maybe like $80 a night. I was seeing like £290 a night. So it's a crazy difference. Same thing. I was looking at domestic flights in America just the other day when I was in London, and I thought, £400, that seems a bit steep. Let me wait till I get to America. I get here and I booked the flight for $100. So
Wow.
it's literally I knew about devices, but I never considered that. Is this even legal for them to use my device
I think this is an
a
interesting
higher
line of
price?
conversation. I think this is very interesting because I've also observed this as well. I've seen this play out even like you are on the same website with another person next to you and you're getting priced differently. This is it, I find it creepy. I think this is this is a privacy thing because it goes back to the amount of data collected, right? So the idea is you have enough data on a person, you can predict sort of what their lifestyle is, and you can sort of predict what their financial capacity is. And this all comes from, do you know, so this, I mean, this would sort of lead us down the concept of the whole thing about data brokers and all that, and how they help piece together information that makes a profile for you as a person. And I think all of this is just extremely creepy, really. That's
It's erroneous because I never accept cookies. I go out of my way, especially those ones that have the legitimate interest of third parties ticked. I will go and untick 50 boxes if I need to. So I'm like, how are they getting this information? A, and B, I don't know. It just feels like, because I don't have a social media presence, I'm very intentional about that. Because I'm very cautious of my online footprint. And this isn't recent. This is 1.5 decades of me being intentional. I haven't had Facebook since 2000 and single digits. I haven't had Instagram for literally a decade. Do you know what I mean? So I'm like, I deleted my Facebook at the point of time where that stuff is not still in the cloud. Like that stuff, that was where, like, if you don't reactivate or sign in within a year, it's gone forever. So when data brokers are building profiles of me, you're wrong. I'm broke. I don't have the money you can have. I don't have it. Like, my rent is extortionate. I don't have it. So you're building a profile based on misleading information. You may think, okay, she's got a brand new laptop, or, I don't know, a laptop, a MacBook that's 17 inches, it's specced out. It's a work computer.
Yeah.
So, it's the information you're getting is wrong, and you're drawing these conclusions that are misguided. And now I'm the one who's suffering because I'm seeing 300, 400 pound flights when I could get it for $100, which is what, about $80, £80? Like
That's a lot.
it's yeah. And I'm now that I've learned this, I'm gonna look into who do I sue because it doesn't seem like with the data regulations around this kind of thing is above board. It seems like this negative impacts me, and if this has a potential to negatively, like, have a negative consequence, and I would imagine something's amiss here
Yeah.
because you're using my data.
Yeah. And this is the stuff that you know, right? This is the stuff that you know has been like, this is the creepy thing. This is the stuff that they're confident enough to let you know about. Then how about the stuff that are not? And I don't mean to like sound, like bring doomsday upon the act of pressing data and just make it all sound creepy and all that. But I mean, it's all worth like having a think about, and that's why you need to be cautious. But also, everybody just needs
And
to
I
be.
think that's one, yeah. And I think that's one thing that I've done at Paystack. Somebody put on our Slack channel all random how they want to fight me because they were browsing a website, a free website, and they were wondering, how does this website make money if it's free? Are they harvesting my data? And they went to go and read the privacy policy. And she was like, what am I doing? Why am I reading a privacy policy? And I thought, mission accomplished, because yeah, ask these questions. Like, how could this company possibly be making money,
Yeah.
but you're using my data? Let me find out what you're doing with it. And how do you find out? By reading a privacy policy.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think people don't know what they don't know, and you really can't blame them, which is why I think podcasts like this are so important, because people learn things in a relaxed manner. Like, I'm the type of person, if you want training, I'll train you. Like, I wouldn't even charge. I'll just train you because I feel like
Enjoy it.
you need things. Yeah, you need to know these things. So I feel like obviously people don't respond to that. Nobody wants to just take vocational trainings for fun. So podcasts help people understand what the risks are. Like,
Yeah.
you in Nigeria, we collect so much data and we don't even realize that we are duplicating the most sensitive pieces of data, your biometric information, your fingerprint. No two people in the world have the same fingerprints, even identical twins. And people don't know that. People also don't know that if somebody has your fingerprints and they place that fingerprint at the scene of a murder, guess what? You're going down for that, because how do you start arguing your way out of it? So in Nigeria, all these federal institutions, immigration, NIN, SIM card, BVN, they're all collecting our biometric information. But is it housed in the same place? Is it one central repository? Do we know that it's locked down under lock and key?
Exactly. And what is the process for making changes, for correcting errors, for even knowing that there are errors that exist? How long are you keeping it for? Like how many sources are you getting the information from, and how many of them are valid sources of the information? Like, it's a lot that's going on, I think.
Like, why, if one is mandatory NIN, then why can't the BVN be pulled from your NIN biometrics? Why can't immigration pull? Like, it should all be collected once and once only. So I think we have a lot of work to do in Nigeria, because education works if you enforce. If you educate and you're not enforcing, it's almost counterintuitive, because people are like, but if this is what the law says, but as a country, we're not really abiding by it, even in terms of our public institutions, then how are we protecting data if we just know the most sensitive piece of data that belongs to me? There's about 5 copies in circulation in different agencies.
And anyone can just pull it out. And that's the case with the recent NIMC scandal that's, basically broke out, that basically NIMC had a third-party leak. Well, not third-party leak, but there was a website from which you could buy people's NIN information. And basically, the reason why they were able to access the information is because some of the vendors working for NIMC, using the NIMC platform for verification of identity, someone had actually sold their access off to this website. And this is the big scandal right now in Nigerian data protection space. And it really calls for concern, because there's so many questions, like, were the vendors not properly
Vetted, yep.
exactly vetted, was what was the process in place, or what measures, what kind of due diligence, and to what extent was due diligence done, their capacity to maintain security of the data. So even if it's one man in the organization that was able to sell off that access and whatnot, why were there no measures in those organizations to ensure, or in that particular organization, to ensure that that kind of thing cannot happen? And why is NIMC not aware that, the processes, there's XYZ exposures from the processes of their processors that could potentially lead to a situation like this? And it's just crazy because it's a very strange, strange, like the amount of sensitive data they're collecting, and they have everything literally from your mother's name. They have everything about you, basically.
State of origin, religion, ethnicity, like these are things that, okay, what does having that information, how is that related to me having a SIM card, first of all? Why do you need my fingerprints for me to have a SIM card? Like, these are the questions that we need to ask. So why do we have NDPR, NDPA, if we're going to allow public institutions to collect a surplus of data and not abide by data minimization, whereby you're only collecting the minimum amount of information needed for that purpose? Like, I don't know, there's so many questions and not enough answers. And I feel like as we're educating the populace, we also have to make it easy for them, because the same vigor that we said, if you don't do your NIN, you can forget about having whatever. And I can't remember if it was NIN. Yeah, I think it was NIN. Your SIM card, your phone gets cut off or something. Yeah, so why can't we have that same energy with protecting people's data? It's possible. See how during COVID, all of a sudden, the government was leveraging telcos and sending, wash your hands, keep a safe space. Like, why aren't we doing the same drive with don't sell people's data? It used to be a huge problem in Nigeria. And for the last few years, we've done a lot through legislation to send a message that, no, it's not okay to sell people's data. It's actually illegal. But now you've got the NIMC of all bodies that have been implicated in a scandal whereby data is being sold to third parties, but not just data, like your national identity is being sold.
This is the thing. Let me play devil's advocate a little bit and say, in the one hand, I mean, we've had response from the NDP with regards to this. So where they said they're carrying out investigations and whatnot and restricting access to the NIMC platform and all that. So you could say in some sense, like, given the youth of our like data protection framework, like that we even have a responsive or a semi-responsive regulator, somewhat something to applaud.
Yeah.
But the question is, like, it feels like the technology is moving too fast for the pace at which we are responding. I think that's
exactly. And I think we have to remember Nigeria jumped a lot of technological ages. Like, we went from being a cash culture to suddenly we're using cards. We skipped, I don't know what the phase is, whether it's the not landline, because we did have landlines. But basically we skipped a bunch of digital eras and we just digitized very quickly, which is testament to the brilliance of Nigerians. But at the same time, we've done a lot in terms of legislation, but this is why in cases like this, you throw the book.
I think the responsibility for ensuring that your processors are responsible, I think, creates a ripple effect generally in the industry. And it's not something that, if you're taking anything in data protection with levity, the consequence for not ensuring that your processors are up to standard is one that should be taken very seriously. Because if you know as a processor that your processors are not up to standard, and so no right thinking controller would want to work with you, you would not need to be forced or coerced into getting your ducks in a row. You will, because it's a consequence for your business to continue, get yourself in order. And I think get your house in order. I think if there was anything, this issue of, who are your processors and what are their processes, this is a big issue, a big question that must be taken seriously. But like,
and again, when you are a leader, and this is something that we started doing at PaceType, because it got to a point where we have a third-party security and privacy risk management framework. So we do due diligence and we send out questionnaires and we review what they actually give us back. So if I say, sorry, their privacy isn't up to scratch, and then the business owner or the relationship owner says, okay, but we really need them, they're critical to our operations, we've now pushed it up a notch, especially if it's a local vendor, and we say, okay, what are their gaps?
Yeah.
How can we work with them to close their gaps? Because we need them and we want to work with them.
Yeah.
And again, people don't know what they don't know. So if this company doesn't have a privacy team, doesn't have, they don't have the people asking these questions and who are responsible for these things, just like Paystack didn't have a data protection officer who was a subject matter expert before I joined. But you learn and people show you the way. You bring in subject matter experts. And if they don't have them, then okay, let us bridge the gap and help you.
Yeah.
Because we have subject matter experts. Yes, I don't have capacity, but if the relationship owner at Paystack is telling me we need them, so if you like,
capacity.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, then you become the blocker to the business possibly, succeeding in different ways.
Yeah.
Everybody wants that. And again, if one of our mandates and responsibilities as privacy experts, and we want to see a change in Nigeria, why wouldn't we then go the extra mile and say, okay, this is what you need. You need a privacy policy. You need to train your staff. We have a training. We can give you the training if you really want. Like, you're a small company of 10 employees. We'll train you, no problem. Like, we would rather do that than allow you to continue processing data of other companies and not having any of this stuff in place and not knowing you need to have this stuff in place.
I love
Doesn't
that
make
you're
sense.
thinking about this, which is this idea of cooperative atmosphere towards complying with data protection. I think there's that gap. We talk about SMEs and the challenge for SMEs to sort of broker the gap between compliance and their responsibilities ultimately. I think when we talk like this, we then talk about the fact that actually it's not just the regulator's responsibility, but there needs to be a cooperative atmosphere towards it, and that also involves the buy-in of controllers, and the law has basically made provision for that. So it's all very interesting, honestly. I feel like if we go down this line of conversation, we would never come back.
I know. I feel like I'm the best and worst guest because I'll just talk your ear off all day about this.
The role of a DPO is not, you don't see many DPOs. I find
Mm.
that you find a lot more privacy councils. But DPOs, yeah, you see a lot of people say they're DPOs, but people that are like solely DPO by role, who are like, in that's their primary role and responsibility, not someone that is taking a conjoined role,
Mhm.
this and this, or I'm cybersecurity, information security, and then my role also involves the role of a DPO. So it's actually really nice to sort of get you to speak about that. And I want us to talk about that part of what you do. So let's talk about like the career of a DPO, because the episode is meant to be a day in the life of a DPO. So I want us to speak extensively about that as well. So first question, like the obvious question. I mean, you spoke about having been in a big four earlier in our conversation. But my question, how did you get here? Like, how did you go from big four to here? And what were you doing before big four? And what has been your career journey basically?
Oh my goodness. My career journey has been a shot in the dark and a series of very happy coincidences and events. So I always wanted to be a diplomat, and eventually the British ambassador to France. I thought maybe the Nigerian ambassador, but I'm a high achiever, so I thought let's double down and go for British ambassador to France. Yeah, I don't know. So I moved to France, did my undergraduate degree at a French university in French literature and linguistics, worked at the American embassy afterwards in protocol department. Then Chibok happened. Boko Haram kidnapped and abducted hundreds of schoolgirls. And I moved to Israel because I thought if there's one thing Nigeria can't handle, it's terrorism. So let me learn from the best. And I went to Israel and I worked at a think tank and did a lot of research on Boko Haram and insurgencies, etc. From there, I started working at an Israeli cybersecurity firm. And part of the things that I did was social media, large-scale influencing, cybersecurity strategy, and data protection. From there, I did my master's at an Israeli university, and it was a security track, terrorism and how the future of terrorism is in the cyber realm. Then I moved to Nigeria and I thought, right, let me see what Nigeria is doing. I did all of this so I could do Homeland Security in Nigeria, went to KPMG, and then the NDPR came into fruition shortly after. So I started off as a cybersecurity strategist at KPMG Nigeria. Then I fell into data protection and privacy. I was training KPMG staff in data protection. I was doing the audits. I created the audit deck that they were using. So it just all kind of naturally happened one after the other. I sat my CIPPE, and I did that through TechHive, who is the IAPP, that's the International Association of Privacy Professionals. TechHive Advisory is the official partner in Nigeria of the IAPP. So I met a really cool guy called Ridwan, and we started chatting. He ended up being really cool. And I believe people who are passionate about things that affect other people and help the world just get a little bit better, no matter what field. His happens to be privacy. I kept in touch with him. And then a year or two later, somebody reached out to me, a friend of his who worked at Paystack, who said they were looking for a DPO. And my name came up through the grapevine. And would I like to interview? And I was like, sure, I guess. And that's basically how, because I'd been applying for jobs for a long time, and then it kind of just fell into my lap. And I'm a big believer in, I'd been going through a lot of life changes at that point in time. I won't bore you with it, but I'm a big believer in things happen for a reason and things happen for a season. So it felt like all the stars aligned, and Paystack was right time, right place, right moment. So when I started at Paystack, at that point, I was like a privacy enthusiast. I created a company in Nigeria. I registered it as a DPCO. I did a data protection compliance audit for channels. I was really like, how can I change things on ground? But as we know, sometimes people don't want to listen to you if you're a single woman and you don't really have much gravitas in certain circles. Like, people don't know you. And in Nigeria, people don't know you. They don't know your face. They don't know what you're about. And just like, okay, cool. Like,
They're screaming privacy in their face. They're like, who's this?
exactly.
I don't really care.
Exactly. Where's your husband? Where's your father? Because we don't know who you are. So yeah, it was that's how I fell into it, basically, long story short. And I think I underestimated what being a data protection officer would entail, because Paystack is live in a number of countries. And one of their goals is to, facilitate payments across Africa. So when you're looking at being a data protection officer at a company that is live in about 7 jurisdictions, that's 7 different laws you have to comply with. That's 7 different requirements, whether it's data localization, you have to keep your data in countries somewhere like Egypt, whether it's you have to register, or you have to do annual audits like in Nigeria, or you have to apply for approval to even process data like in Ivory Coast. And thankfully I speak French, but you're operating in markets where, yeah, they only speak French, and all of a sudden now you're interacting with regulators in French. So there's a lot that comes with the turf. And I think the only reason why I've not lost my mind is because I love what I do. Yeah. I really love what I do, but it can be quite daunting sometimes. But like I said, like I've been saying, Paystack understood the assignment, and they were like, okay, we'll do our best to be compliant. Just tell us how. That's all you have to do. Tell us how. And they did. And it makes being a DPO that much easier, because people almost don't want to disappoint you. They don't want to let you down. They don't want to be the reason that you're like, why have you done this? Like, because it's like, nobody wants that disappointed parent. Like, be angry, shout and scream. But if you're just like, I've tried, like, people feel that. So it's a lot. And again, things like the PriveCon Awards, when you then end up clearing house and winning all the awards, or all the awards that you've been nominated for, it makes it like worthwhile. Like, okay, so I'm not just screaming into an empty vacuum. Yeah. And when you see things like the emergence of AI, who does that fall to now from companies? It's the data protection officer. That's the most logical person that will build an AI governance framework.
This is also like a heated conversation as well. Like, who should the regulation fall to? Because the natural channel, like in a lot of countries, the clear option typically is like the regulator for data protection, for whatever data.
Yeah.
It's very it's very interesting actually. So even in
Yeah.
you can afford to the DPO because literally AI is powered by data. So I mean, what else?
Yep, exactly. And that's the thing. It's like a very interest. There's always like emerging trends. Things are moving and shaking. We have machine learning. So it's like there's so much to do. And I think when you are operating in multi-jurisdictions, when you have things like binding corporate rules, you start to raise your own targets, your own standards, your own like, okay, now we have a privacy program. Now we have, updated privacy policies. Now we've got the minimum done. How do we mature? How do we improve? How do we build? How do we do more? So it's a very, and people don't know it, but a data protection officer's life can be very lonely. It can be very lonely. And as you know, Paystack was acquired by Stripe. And I remember one day she told me like confidentiality, even though they acquired us. So we're not sharing information. But she said to me once, and I'll never forget it, she was like, think of this as a support group. Like we're here for each other. Because yeah, and it really resonated with me because it's like, when people make mistakes in a company, people will always make mistakes. And again, people know what they know. So even if you train them, somebody's going to forget or it's human error. People will always, if you have phishing campaigns, somebody is bound to click on that link, like trust and believe. So as much as it can feel frustrating, it can feel like, how come this person doesn't get it or they didn't get it? It's like your mission still stands. And having that DPO to DPO call where we just check in on each other. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Like, I know you have your company training coming up. Good luck, because again, now to push training to 200 people who have targets, to have deadlines, they're like, this is a lot. And again, if you're not a compliance junkie, if your brain is a tech bro brain,
it's not your priority.
It's not your priority. And I understand that. So again, to even just, I wouldn't even say lament, but just be like, yeah, you know what I mean? It just have somebody who understands exactly what you're going through. For me, that was something that I never thought I would need.
Talking about the beginning of your career again, because first of all, this is a lot of experience that you got. Like, you have all the tea on the Israeli cybersecurity.
I guess, yeah. I had to learn from the best.
Yeah, I feel like we're gonna have a different chat about that. I'm just so. Do you know that was one of the first things I was curious about in privacy? Just like yeah. But that's another side. I'm a big documentary watcher as well, so you can imagine all the questions I would have. But I was gonna ask you. So, what do you think is the one skill or experience that made you stand out as an applicant, and also probably more in line with it, helped you to settle best into your role, like as a DPO?
Honestly, I couldn't tell you because I still have imposter syndrome. Like, I really did not think I was going to win any award. Like, talkless of Paystack, and I was thinking this is going to be so embarrassing. Like, I can't tell you what got me the job because I didn't think I was going to get the job. I was just like, whatever. Like, if people think, okay, I need to get a CIPPE in order to be a player in privacy. No, you don't, because I didn't have that. Like, I studied French literature and linguistics. I was very much like, oh, I love French books. I love French cinema. Like, I had no privacy experience. Like, yes, I moved to cybersecurity, but it was strategy. So again, that helped, but I'm a big believer, if you're passionate about something, that passion that will inspire you to read more and learn more and discover more. Like, for me to create a company and become a DPCO, again, I was just like, they're probably not going to give it to me. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like I said, it's a blessing and a curse because I am almost never satisfied because I always think there's more that I can be doing. And there is always more you can do. So I'm always like chasing the next, like, how can I do better? How can Paystack do better with privacy? How can I learn more? To the point that my parents were like, it's enough. Stop doing exams. We're not paying anymore. Like, they were like, you don't need it. And I'm like, but I do, because it teaches me new things. If I hadn't done my ISO 27001 ISMS lead implementer, which my parents refused to pay for, fair enough. I paid for it myself. If I hadn't done CIPM, it wouldn't have allowed me to be ISMS manager at Paystack. If I hadn't been ISMS manager or done my lead implementer, I wouldn't have then been like, let's get a PIMS, let's get a privacy information management system. I would like, do you know what I mean? Like sometimes you just have to take a leap of faith.
Yeah.
Because there's no amount of certifications or knowledge that will, if you don't have it, you don't have it.
Yeah.
But if you're driven by, I want to be part of the change, I want to somehow improve privacy in Nigeria or in Rwanda, or even just for my peers, my colleagues, myself, my friends, like if that's where you're operating from, if you're like, I just want to earn a salary, a good salary, and I hear DPOs get paid well, so you're not going to succeed. Because I really believe that you can do a job, but you'll never be great at that job if you don't enjoy what you're doing. If you don't believe in what you do, you'll never be good at it. You can coast, you can be mediocre, you can, get things done. But in terms of excelling, you have to really believe in what you're doing, because it makes it easier when you have back-to-back audits and you're getting grilled, or somebody says the worst thing they could possibly say in an audit. You can deal with it because it's like, I want this. Not like, oh my gosh, now I'm just like, I'm going to quit my job. I can't be bothered. This
Let's go again.
Like, here we go, literally. So I think that was it for me. And what was your other question? I think you asked me how I got the job. I couldn't tell you, but probably my enthusiasm came through.
You don't need all the certifications and all that, but you need to want to know and want to actually problem. So you would then have,
and it's my imposter syndrome that drove me to get the certifications. And even I'm such a weirdo. Like literally the night before I sat my CIPM exam, I realized I'd used the old book of knowledge or body of knowledge, whatever it's called. So I'd been revising off the outdated syllabus, and I had a complete breakdown. And I was sobbing. 5 a.m. My exam was 8, and I was like, I'm gonna fail. But I'm like, I've been working in this field for years.
Oh no!
So all the studying I'm studying, nothing will prepare you more than doing the work. Because there's nothing I can read that's going to tell me how to write a privacy policy if I haven't written a gazillion in my life. Like, you know what I mean? So I think just showing up and being passionate. Even our CEO, I was announcing our privacy awards that we were recommended for a PIMS by PCB, and that we filed an audit report in Cote d'Ivoire. I announced it to the company last week. And I remember our CEO was like, people are asking, how do you have so much enthusiasm and passion? I was like, I mean, sometimes I take pre-workout before the gym, but generally not today. I didn't go to the gym today, but it's just because I love all things privacy. And he was like, good answer. That's the right answer. But I'm like, that's the only answer. Because I can't do a podcast in the afternoon and on the weekend and not be dragging my feet if it's not something I don't want to talk about. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I could be like, no, sorry, it's the weekend, can't be bothered.
Emails. It came through in the emails. I mean, you mentioned something earlier. You were like, well, people hear that DPOs get paid much. So do DPOs get paid much? Do they get paid well?
I think it's all relative, because it's all relative. I've seen DPO gigs for one company that's like, I think I saw one for like $180,000, but it was a health company. It was a healthcare company.
Sensitive personal data.
And then again, remember, but I've seen gigs for like 20K. That's pounds, So it really depends on the company, what data they're processing, and also remember, you're liable as a data protection officer. And in a lot of these African jurisdictions, if anything goes wrong, they will arrest the DPO. Oh, wow. So I think the salary comes with the fact that there's a huge risk with the role. It's like a compliance officer. Who do you think that they're going to start asking questions and probing? The data protection officer.
Yeah. So noted. I mean, like,
compliance
officer, you may not.
So I think
some nights you may not. You may randomly get arrested. It's a risk of the
literally. So if you're doing it for the money, you're doing it for the wrong reasons, because that means like it's a means to an end.
Yeah. I mean, but this is something else I wanted to. So you also mentioned about like imposter syndrome. I wanted to ask about like imposter syndrome and dealing with. I feel like this episode is gonna be a two-part episode because there's just so much knowledge that I'm like getting from it. Do you know what? We'll keep going. I'm so sorry to take up your time. I know, like,
Oh, no, it's fine. I have nothing doing.
Okay, I'm happy. Oh gosh. So I was gonna ask, you said dealing with imposter syndrome and is a big part of like what, because for DPOs especially, because you're also trying to get management buy-in, like, and then you're also, the whole company is looking up to you, and then you've also got this element of risk that's constantly breathing down your neck. You could get arrested at any time. How do you sort of find a balance and like sort of just lean into your ability and just say, I can do this, and sort of get rid of the imposter syndrome?
I can't. I think I'm always going to be afflicted with imposter syndrome. It's just how I am. But I think, listen, you have to be responsible. You have to be responsible with drawing the line. There's only so much you can do, right? And that's why I feel like if you do your best and if you try your hardest to educate those around you and bring people around you on board, getting buy-in was one of the hardest things. And I still, till today, can't tell you how I did it. But I think through a lot of trial and error, and just revising and revisiting my strategy and approach, because having breakdowns was not effective. It didn't help me achieve my goal anymore.
Yeah.
And it didn't get rid of that inherent risk that's always going to be there. Somebody may always do the wrong thing, but that's just human error. I can't control that. So there's no point staying up at night, like having sleepless nights because of possibilities that will always be there. I know the kind of person I am. I'm extremely like passionate. I will always push myself. And sometimes I will push myself to breaking point. And that's a me thing. So I've had to, over the years, be like, okay, can I do any more? If I can do any more, then let me do it. But let me do it responsibly. Let me not do it after hours. Let me at least try, especially working from home, like you kind of lose those boundaries. So I was like, let me do up until the point where I feel like I'm at breaking point, and then come back with a clear head, because I'm just working myself up, thinking of all the things that can go wrong. That's also how I live my life. I think worst case scenario, because if I have worst case scenario in mind, I can plan backwards from the worst case. And if the worst case happens, I'm like, well, I was prepared for it because I knew this was a possibility.
Yeah.
So
I think I can relate. People who
yeah,
this in the house.
that's like when you feel like you don't want to doomsday, and I'm like, God, I live in doomsday. Like I literally do. Like when I buy a house one day, I'm gonna create a bunker because I need to just like I need to be prepared for all eventualities.
Gosh, I understand honestly 100% what you're talking about. Literally, I think in any high performance job, any job that expects, you kind of have that bit where you're like, you have to find a strong coping mechanism. If not, you're not going to be able to perform, because it also keeps you stuck in like the space of, yes, you can't move past the one thing that happened, or that you're thinking is gonna happen but it's never gonna happen, and you just don't do anything again. Yeah, but then I was just gonna ask you about like so so you speak about DPs in Africa and dealing with them, and so which ones are the most interesting to deal with? I mean, it's so great and comes in handy that you speak French. Note for anyone looking to be a DPO dealing with African countries, you might need to get the language. But
You actually might.
yeah, and that must surely like make the job a bit easier as well, like being able to communicate and overcome the communication barrier.
Yes and no, because remember, you have communication barriers and you also have cultural barriers.
Oh yeah,
so
okay.
Nigerians, we are movers and shakers. We get things done. We're hustlers. We're fast paced.
Yeah.
So when I joined Paystack in 2021, that was one of my first things that I took over. Okay, we need to register with Artsy, which is the regulator.
Yeah.
Till today, our application is still with them. You know what I mean? And again, there's nothing that they're waiting for us to do. So they've given us acknowledgement, which, that's at that point, you can't do anymore. It's the decision is with them, and we just have to wait for them to give us.
Get back.
Following up for 3 years on an application, and there's nothing blocking us. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like, okay, we have things that we need to remediate beforehand. It's just, I would say, and I think it's great because a lot more African countries are trying to, take data protection privacy seriously. but a lot of them are also not enforcing. So South Africa and Kenya are pretty forward facing. Yeah, and they're very good at kind of holding companies accountable. Okay, this is our law, therefore we're enforcing it. This is the day you have to comply. We're going to do spot checks. You know, you hear of enforcement notices, even Ghana as well as one that's moving up as well. Then you have the newer ones, a bit like Rwanda. So Rwanda and Ivory Coast, they want the DPO to be accessible, which, you know, that's fine. You can have a group data protection officer, but they just have to be accessible in jurisdiction, in terms of, time zone and maybe language.
Yeah.
So imagine my surprise where they said the DPO in Ivory Coast has to be Ivorian. That's not prescribed anywhere in the law, but the regulator has just said that. So now, do you see what I mean? Like, there were all these, because it's African regulations, they do things the African way, which is they can just enforce something that isn't prescribed in the law.
And
so
scrambling.
If it doesn't say it anywhere in any legal requirement or documentation, you know, but then it's like, do you now start arguing with regulators? Like, that doesn't bode well. So I think that's something I found quite challenging, because you always want to do things by the book, but it also makes for creative problem solving, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
So it has its ups and downs, but I think it feels very rewarding to be part of the conversation, you know, even in podcasts like this. And we need more people like you who are trying to do things through different approaches. And then that's how you start doing roundtables, engaging regulators, things like that. But I think a lot of stigma is placed on, well, not just Africa, but Nigeria. You know, we have that whole 419 scam, this, that. So I think the fact that the intentional efforts are being made to draw up data protection laws, I think it's really, really important that those of us who are on ground on the continent do whatever we can to at least comply with what they have in the laws, you know?
Yeah. So I was going to ask you about, okay, so being in your role, like, right, you've spoken about, you know, having to navigate all these and creative problem solving, navigating all these different people and different cultural expectations. What do you think is like probably like the most difficult part of your role, but also the most essential skill for survival in your role?
The most difficult part of my role, I would definitely say, is operating across different jurisdictions. Because as much as they all say the same thing, it's same, but different.
Yeah.
And because I thrive in structure and organization and just like knowing what my responsibilities are, or what, you know, I have an audit calendar, for example, it makes it more manageable. But all of a sudden, when you have your ISMS audit, your PIMS audit, your NDPR audits, you have CBN coming, you have, you know what I mean? Then you find out, oh, by the way, you have an audit report due in Ivory Coast in the next 5 days, but you know you're going to be in an audit back to back every day. That's when, even though you know these things are coming, all of a sudden, if the timelines all coincide, it feels very unmanageable. Because there can never be any surprise that I don't know about in terms of what our regulatory and compliance obligations are. So the CIV one caught me off guard, but it caught me off guard 3 weeks to the due date, if that makes sense.
That's a good catching off guard. There's time to
yeah. But being a data protection officer, 3 weeks will go by like this, and you're like, oh, okay. So but again, this is where manpower comes into play, because I didn't have the manpower in terms of a team. So I was fortunate enough to make a case as some supporting consultants. So there are certain things they do, but they're not involved deep down in our paystack operations. So maybe if we have data processing agreements that have come either from third parties or that we're shipping to new potential partners or processors, I don't have the time to be reading those kind of contracts. And also, I'm not a lawyer. So reading an agreement is something a lawyer, it takes them time, but they're used to legalese and all that. For me, reading a data processing agreement will take me twice the time, because I have to read every single thing. And I have to make sure that, even though it's English that I understand, my brain, it just takes me longer. So I've now outsourced that to Tech Hive Advisory. So that's a substantial number of hours that now I've handed over, right? They also keep an eye on regulatory obligations. So they're the ones who flag, by the way, just a reminder, you've got that CIV audit report due. So it's not that they'll do the report, but again, just having, you know what I mean? Like
having the support that you need, yes, in certain things.
Exactly.
You can delegate, yes. So like, I mean, that's a crucial thing that you would need for, but I was also going to ask you, like, because you said, like, you know, you have to delegate out certain things that you can afford to, but what parts of the things that you still have to keep? And actually, more importantly, first of all, that's literally proof that you don't have to be a lawyer to be a DPO, by the way. Just
definitely not.
Yeah.
That's a horrible myth. I don't know who started that, but I am like, I'm actually a staunch advocate for the other way. I would rather people who enter data privacy and protection come from a information security background, because they're so closely tied. Data protection is literally enforced by information security. So you're going to work closely with security, far closer than you work with your legal team on anything data privacy related. So for me, I still don't understand why everyone's like, oh, you have to be a lawyer to be in privacy. No, you don't.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that we're able to like clear that out, because it was actually one of the questions I was going to ask you. Do you think that you would need to? Such like a robust conversation. Like literally, it's been an amazing conversation. For me, I've learned a lot, and I'm glad that I've been able to ask you all these questions that, you know, I also had things I had questions about. But I wanted to ask you, so you said you're always chasing something. So what's the next step for you? What's the next thing you're chasing? If you can share, because I understand that.
Of course. DPIA remediations from products. And my goodness, those product guys are always building and they're always busy. So it's like I've figured out a way to make it work whereby I set up an hour call with like a product manager and we go through the DPIA together. So it's like a hand-holding experience, but it's also like an informative experience, following up on some opportunities for improvement for post ISMS and PIMS audit. We didn't get any non-conformities, so it's just like, again, with the management system, ISO standards, it's continual improvement. Data mapping, we put them on OneTrust, which is great, but again, you have to keep an eye on these things because they move. We're going to do a ROPA review. We do an annual ROPA exercise, so that's up next. I'm working on AI governance. I want to start this quarter at least just having an AI tooling inventory at Paystack. So having that documented, and then
also interesting. Like I feel like perspectives like yours are very important, just to kind of, because I feel like we don't really get the conversation of what is the behind the scenes of being a DPO like. And I'm so glad that I had this conversation. And then I'm the one sitting in the interviewer's chair or the host chair in this conversation. And I'm so glad. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Like, it's really important. I'm so glad that we had this conversation. But like, we will still do other things and we will still love you to be there.
I'm sure of that. Yeah. I honestly, like, I've been looking for people like you. So
do you know, I was just scanning through my list of questions. I'm like, wait, she answered this, she answered this one, she answered this one, she answered this one. And I didn't even ask them. So I'm so glad that we had the conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm so sad Delacqua wasn't on the recording today to actually meet you through the recording, but
don't worry.
I mean, there's so many more opportunities to meet and connect and things like that. But so thank you so much for coming on the
Thank you for having me. I've always looked at you guys' podcast and I'm like, I'll know I've made it when I get an invite to join the podcast. And it came.
Wow.
Yeah. I literally would be like, one day maybe these guys will know me, and like here we are. So
no, we feel like we've made it when we have you on the podcast.
Oh my gosh, no. So yeah, we're just fangirling each other at this point. But thank you for having me. I honestly really appreciate it. This has been great.
Yeah, same here. Thank you.
Until next time. Yeah, you remains our lovely DPO and I, Itunde. This episode was sponsored by Ikigai Innovation Initiative and was brought to you by Tech Hive Advisory.
And a big shout out to our executive producer, Ridwan Oluyede, associate producers, Dolakwan Yetunde.
This podcast was edited by Ayonfe Aino. Shout out to her. and our podcast associate Victoria Adaramola, and graphics by Okwe Abujade.